A 20-cent bill led me to a gang of $300,000 and $300,000. My grandson led the criminal gang that swindled the Satrix out of their money. I found the bill tucked tightly into the cuff of my winter coat. A 20-cent bill, the kind that shouldn't exist outside a toy store or a joke catalog. Green ink, a corrupt president, the paper too thin. Someone had slipped it in there as if on a dare. I held it up to the kitchen lamp to examine it. Only one other person had borrowed that coat that week, my grandson Leo, who stopped by on Wednesday to help me set up my Wi-Fi. That same afternoon, the police came to Hulda and Ian, a quiet couple living 3 doors down. I watched them from the window. Hulda's hands were trembling. Ian stood there, stunned. The Satrix had wired the money to someone they trusted, and it was gone. $300,000. Their son's health insurance, their pension, the porch they'd planned to rebuild, where the wood softened every spring. Later, Hulda found me on the sidewalk, her eyes shining, her voice a whisper. We did as he said. We did everything right. I brought her into the house, poured her tea, and listened as she told the story. A call, supposedly from the bank, a calm young man who remembered the last 4 digits of his account, an email that looked genuine with a logo as clear as glass. Instructions not to tell anyone for security reasons. I recognized this pattern the way you recognize a fever. Nothing dramatic at first, just a heat that builds until it's all you feel. When Hulda left, she hugged me like a lifeline she couldn't keep. I washed the cups at a slow, familiar pace and told myself not to think about Leo. But the bill nagged at me. Why put a counterfeit 20-cent bill in my coat? Why today? Why at all? I put on my glasses and searched the ink for a clue, the way I used to with my students' essays. Everyone leaves fingerprints when they lie. In the lower right corner, someone had placed a tiny purple star, not printed but stamped, the kind of mark a small business might use to stamp their gift money. I called a craft store downtown, then a party supply store on Maple Street, then a photo prop shop 2 towns over. It was a prop shop. We stamp stars? The girl chirped. We sell them in packs for photo shoots, treasure hunts, and, well, TikTok. I asked who had bought a pack this week. She couldn't name names, but she could tell that the cash purchases had gone fast on Tuesday. 3 packs, she said, 2 boys and a girl. Early 20s, they were laughing. 2 boys and a girl. I sat up and felt the room reshape itself around that shape. Once, in a very different life, I had observed gangs, school committees that said they were protecting teachers, but really only protected the budget. A hospital administrator who forgave a donor's son for a hit and run in exchange for a wing with his name on it. Small gangs seem like friendships until you add up the cost. If there were 3 of them, and one of them was my Leo, who were the other 2? And how did a counterfeit 20-cent bill end up in my coat? As if it wanted to be found. When Leo returned Friday to fix the Wi-Fi again, I let him. I made coffee. I mentioned the police at the Satrix. His jaw tightened, then softened into that charm he learned with his first haircut. Such a shame, he said, tapping at my router like it was misbehaving. Old folks get targeted. You've got to be careful, Grandma. Careful, I repeated and set the fake bill on the table between us. What about this? He glanced down, then up too fast. Where did you get that? In the coat you borrowed, I said. It's a joke, I know. But jokes stick to people. Tell me what I'm looking at. His nostrils flared the way my son's used to when he was cornered. It's just prop money. We used it for a video. You know how it is? I know how it is, I said, and held his eyes longer than a grandmother is supposed to. How could my grandson do this to me, to us, to neighbors who fed him cookies when he was 5 and lent him their ladder last summer? The question sat in my throat like a stone. He looked away first. He left a minute later with a hug that smelled like guilt. I didn't cry. I called the number on the Satrix's bank card and asked to speak to fraud prevention. I listened until I understood how the calls worked, where the transfers went, how mules stood between the victims and the masterminds, like buffers you beat on a sofa to hide the dent. I learned the timing, Friday wires, cash pickup within an hour, split in a parking lot where cameras never look long enough. I learned just enough to keep me from doing anything foolish. Then I called my friend Alma, the retired clerk who still knew which detective answered which phone after 6. I can't prove anything yet, I told her, but I can put myself where proof likes to walk by. You're not going to do anything dangerous, Alma said. I'm going to do something precise, I said. Precision isn't danger. It's what keeps danger from winning. That night, I pressed the fake bill flat and slid it into my wallet next to my driver's license. I wrote Leo's name on a slip of paper and underlined it twice. I thought of Hulda's hands, Ion's quiet mouth, the porch rotting by inches because plans had to be canceled. I thought of my grandson standing in my kitchen, speaking the word careful like a threat. Revenge is an ugly word to lay on a grandmother. Still, there is a beauty to balance. If the scale tips, you don't beg it to be kind. You add what you have to the other side until it levels. I have time. I have a listening face. I have neighbors who trust me. And I have a 20-cent bill that doesn't belong in this world. The next morning, I walked the long way to the farmer's market and back, letting the neighborhood tell me its secrets. It always does if you give it the time. Each porch a mouth, each driveway a pause. And on Maple, behind the vape shop, a van idled with the door open and the music low. 2 boys, 1 girl. Not kids, not men either. The girl's hair was the color of a copper penny. One boy had that soft gym build that makes jackets look tailored. The other, the narrow one, watched the street without moving his head. They didn't see me. People rarely do when you are in your 70s and moving like a weed at the edge of a fence. The copper-haired girl rolled a prop bill tight and pushed it into a blue knit hat. The narrow boy laughed. The thick one shook a bag, and I saw a flash of purple star. 3 packs, the clerk had said. Early 20s. Laughing. It is a terrible thing to recognize your own family in strangers' hands. Something went cold in me, but it wasn't fear. It was the kind of cold you need to hold a scalpel steady. I left, bought pears I didn't need, and dialed Alma from the church steps. Detective Rivas, she said, I'm texting you his number. Don't spook him with speeches. Give him times, places, names. He'll listen, I called, and offered nothing that sounded like drama. I have a pattern, I said. 3 kids. One of them might be my grandson. I want you to catch all 3, and I want my neighbor's money back. I'll do exactly what you tell me if you do exactly what I need. Which is, he asked, to keep my name out of it until you can't. Can you describe them? I did. He grunted at each detail like he was hanging jackets on hooks. And your grandson? Leo, I said. Saying his name to a stranger felt like laying down my own bones. Rivas didn't console me. I didn't need consolation. We've got 2 complaints that fit your Friday pattern, he said. We think the pickups happen at the parking lot behind the old bowling alley. We think they rotate cars, borrowed, plates lifted from registered owners who won't notice till Monday. We think one of them uses crypto ATMs after 10. That all ring for you? It did. I had seen the new ATM in the laundromat, the one that glows like a slot machine and spits out QR codes. What do you need from me? I asked. Eyes at a distance, he said. Times and tags. No approach I wanted to argue. I wanted to orchestrate. But precision isn't pride, it's discipline. You'll have them, I said. That night, I reheated lentils and told myself to be patient. I hummed while I ironed. Steady hands keep anger from leaking into view. After 10, I put on that winter coat, it made me invisible this time of year, and walked to the laundromat's glass. The ATM glowed. A boy in a hood loaded bills, counting in tens, hood off for 1 second to scratch his hair. Leo, my grandson, mouth pressed thin the way his father's did when he did something he knew his father would hate. I counted the minutes. I noted the license plate of the car at the curb, a plate that belonged to a white sedan but hung crooked on a black coupe. I texted the details to Rivas. He wrote back a single dot, then another, 3 dots total. I decided that was his way of saying he was listening. I slept badly and woke with a plan like a bird tapping inside my chest. The Satrix trusted me, the neighborhood trusted me. Leo had borrowed my face, the harmless one, the easy one, to come and go at will. I could borrow his. I could be the easy mark who isn't so easy. I printed the flyer on my old inkjet. Scam-proof your savings. Free senior workshop. Saturday, 2 p.m., church basement, cookies and coffee. Bring your suspicious emails, texts, and letters. We'll show you what's safe and what's not. Presented by Neighborhood Digital Literacy Circle, which is what I called Alma and me when we helped the ladies reset their passwords last winter. I slipped copies under doors where eyes watched me with worry. I made a point to hand one directly to the copper-haired girl when I saw her by the vape shop. Bring your grandmother, I said. She smiled with her teeth and without her eyes. I smiled back like a woman who still mixes up upload and download. At home, I set my knitting basket on the counter and opened the false bottom I'd added years ago when my husband was alive, and we hid cash from ourselves to curb our spending. The little camera lay there like a harmless seed. I'd used it once to record new squirrels invading the attic. I charged it, tested it, set it in the basket between skeins of wool, needle tips pointing outward like antennae. If anyone leaned in, I would have faces. Saturday, the basement filled not with anxious grandmothers, but with 3 young people trying hard not to look like one unit. Copper hair wore a gray cardigan. The thick boy wore a flannel as dear to fashion as cardboard. The narrow boy chose a cap that cast his eyes in shadow. Leo came late, gliding, kiss on my cheek, whisper warm. I didn't think you'd actually do a class, he said. I do all sorts of things you don't think, I said, and the basket's little eye watched his mouth form a laugh. If there is a colder moment than placing your grandson in a lineup and circling him, I don't know it. I kept the talk simple. Your bank will never ask you for your password, I said. Your bank will never ask you to move money to protect it. The copper hair shifted in her seat. Any urgent message that says don't tell anyone wants you alone. We do not do alone here. I passed around examples, emails from a folder the Satrix had saved. The narrow boy raised his hand. What if the number matches? Like caller ID? Numbers lie easy, I said. People lie easier. I held up a prop bill. 20 cents. Purple star. Sometimes criminals use junk like this during their rehearsals, I said, and watched Leo's throat work as he swallowed. They tuck it in a pocket to test whether someone looks. If you notice, you're too sharp to call. If you don't, you're ripe. After the talk, I poured coffee. The thick boy lingered too near the door. Copper hair peeked into the kitchen, admired the butter cookies, took one, took 2. Leo helped stack chairs. You're getting good at this, he said, the words trying to land as praise and failing. I've always been good at this, I said. You just haven't been paying attention. I slid a sign-in sheet across the table. Most of the ladies wrote their names like they were leaving prayers. The 3 wrote nothing. That was fine. Some names are better written elsewhere. When the basement emptied, I sat with the knitting basket and replayed the camera. There they were, crystal and careless. The narrow boy's eyes were wrong for a church. The thick boy stuffed 2 cookies in his pocket with a hand like a scoop. Copper hair touched the 20-cent bill like it was a charm. I sent the best stills to Rivas with timestamps. He answered with 1 dot. Then, we know the car. Stay home tonight. I don't think so, I texted. He didn't respond. I took that as permission. Men think they own the word no. They forget who taught it to them. When I opened my door to leave, I found a folded paper on the mat. Inside, a map. A circle around the bowling alley, a small purple star in the corner, no signature. A message then. I held it like a snake. Someone knew I knew. Someone wanted me to be somewhere at some time. Was it bait? Was it a warning? Or was it Leo's shredded conscience trying to steer me toward a place where things might end without blood? I decided to go, not as a hero. I am too old to be stupid. I went as a woman who knows patterns and knows where they break. The bowling alley lot was a pale plate under a sky like tin. Cars lined the back row like a mouth with bad teeth. I parked near the street and watched the alley's rear exit. A young couple came out, laughing, bumping shoulders, too in love to see a thing. 20 minutes later, a black coupe with a white sedan's plates slid into the furthest bay. Copper hair drove. The narrow boy unfolded from the passenger side like a hinge. Leo arrived on foot, hood up. They didn't hug. They didn't need to. They were a story told too many times. A silver sedan rolled in, old man at the wheel, alone. He looked like a man who didn't belong out of bed after 9. He held a bundle. He parked beside the black coupe. Narrow boy got in his passenger seat. They talked briefly. Narrow boy showed him a phone screen. Old man nodded, hand shaking as if he had palsy. He handed over the bundle. Narrow boy counted, too fast for the camera, but slow enough for me. He opened the door, stepped back into the night. Silver sedan pulled out, too smooth for a man with shaking hands. My mouth went dry. A mule. They'd rehearsed him. The move was clean. Rivas materialized like a rumor, 2 cars behind my bumper, lights off. Another unit idled across the street by the shuttered diner. I had not invited them. The texted dots had done the work. He walked to my window with his shoulders low. "You need to stay in the car," he said. "Of course," I said, because I meant it and because I didn't. It happened fast. Copper hair drove to the alley exit. Narrow boy turned his cap backward, scanned the lot. Leo took the bundle and split the money, counting in tens. The bill flared once purple under the diner light. I wanted to vomit. It is a strange thing to watch someone you raised stack proof against himself. Rivas signaled the other unit. They moved like night-shifting weight from one foot to the other. Sirens stayed asleep. The black coupe's door opened, and then a motorcycle screamed past, engine like a saw, rider low and metal, helmet a mirror. Narrow boy flinched. Copper hair stomped the gas. Leo shoved the bundle under the seat. Too slow, too obvious. The other unit cut them off. The coupe shuddered, fishtailed, breathed hard. Doors opened. Young bodies learned how to freeze without being told. The motorcycle looped the lot and fled. It wasn't theirs. It was only noise. But noise changes everything. Rivas and his partner moved the trio to the curb, hands on hoods, pockets emptied. Leo's face went blank. He does that when he thinks he can still decide what kind of man he is. Rivas lifted the bundle. He didn't need to count. One look and a small nod. He called out last names I didn't know, then the only one I did. "Leonard Ortiz," he said, voice even. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud." The words landed on my grandson's shoulders like a coat he'd chosen in a store and only now felt the weight of. He looked up, past Rivas, past the purple star, past the other 2 who were already crying. He looked to my car. He couldn't see me behind the windshield, but something in him knew where to look for an answer he didn't deserve. I did not lower my window. I did not make my mouth soft. I did not save him. I had raised a boy with a compass. He had sold it for a few thick Fridays. If I rescued him now, I would be agreeing that the compass was cheap. Rivas didn't look at me either. He had his own compass to mind. The cuffs clicked, not loud. Little teeth closing. They put the 3 in 2 cars and left the lot in opposite directions. The motorcycle's echo faded. The bowling alley breathed out a clutch of customers who had missed the whole thing. The night went back to its unremarkable self. I drove home behind my heartbeat. I hung my coat on the hook by the door. I placed the prop bill on the counter and watched it as if it might sprout legs. I boiled water. I didn't drink the tea. The next morning, I went to the police station with a bag of muffins, like a woman who had always planned to bake for the boys in blue. Rivas met me in a small room with a too large table. "You were told to stay home," he said, not unkindly. "You were told to listen," I said, not unkindly. He cracked a smile that didn't travel. "The cash we recovered is $36,000. It's not 300, I know," I said. "I also know the Satrix wired their money in a way the bank might be able to claw back if the right pressure is applied quickly." "Pressure?" "Media," I said. "And an old woman who refuses to leave the manager's office until he calls the clawback department himself." He blinked as if he hadn't expected a strategy from someone who looked like I did. "They might have already moved the rest," he said. "Then we make them move something else," I said. "Their fear." He didn't write that down. He wrote other things, names I'd heard shouted in the lot, makes of cars, times, the color of copper hair, the shape of the narrow boy's hands. He recorded that I had a recording. I told him where to find the laundromat footage in the cloud. He told me to go home. I answered with the muffins. Detectives need to be fed like stray cats if you want them to come back. That afternoon, I sat with the Satricks at their kitchen table and laid out the plan like a deck of cards. Your bank can attempt a recall, I said. A freeze on the receiving account, a message to the intermediary financial institution. It's not guaranteed, but if they think a reporter will ask them why they didn't try, they'll try harder. Hulda's hands trembled. Ion's mouth stayed quiet, but less haunted. We drafted the words. We practiced the tone. I went with them to the bank. I wore the coat of harmless that the world had handed me and turned it to my advantage. I mentioned years of loyal patronage, a signature branch community, my husband's pension rolling in like clockwork. I let the manager see me fold the purple-starred bill into my palm and back out like a magician's coin. You don't want your logo on the evening news, I said, soft as rain. He didn't. The recall request went out that day. The manager made calls he said were impossible. Nothing happens quickly in banks unless someone fears embarrassment. I am very good at constructing embarrassment. By evening, one wire was frozen midstream. Another had bounced from a flagged account. It was clawed back. Still too little, still something. I would like to say that was the end of it. That Leo confessed and the other two did too. That the Satricks woke to a full recovery, hugging on their porch while I clapped with the teapot in my hand. That isn't how cleaning messes works. It is slower. It is meaner. It asked me to become something precise for days that felt like months. Rivas called with updates I could live with. We executed search warrants, he said. We found prop money, stamped stars, a ledger with usernames, a cheap laptop with scripts. We found enough to charge all three. We found a storage unit in Camden with a shoebox full of cards. He paused. We found a printed list of names. Some are neighbors. I came to the station to read the list. My eyes stumbled over Mrs. Robbins, who makes pies for the PTA even though her children are long gone, over Mr. Diaz, who walks every morning with a cane and a sports radio. I placed my finger under the names to keep my heart from slipping. There was my own, written in a different hand. Test, someone had scribbled beside it. I let my finger sit there. The line on my palm went pale under the pressure. I want to talk to him, I said, meaning Leo. That's against advice, Rivas said. His counsel won't allow it. I don't need his permission to see my grandson's face. We arranged it anyway, a visit not in the movies, but behind smudged glass, the phone greasy, the air stale. He sat down, like a boy who had learned how to make his shoulders wider than his chest. He picked up the phone and didn't speak. I'm not here to console you, I said, and I'm not here to throw myself across the train tracks you laid. He exhaled a laugh with no laughter in it. Good, because I don't think I could take that, what can you take? He shrugged. You tell me. How did the 20-cent bill find my coat? I asked. Why leave me a trail? His lip twitched. Mara thought it was funny, he said. Copper hair. He looked surprised I knew her name. She liked props. Thought they were clever. Devin bought them. He said it keeps us loose, not like it mattered, everything matters, I said. He rubbed a thumb along the plastic curve of the receiver. I left the map, he said. I didn't sign it. I figured you'd think it was a trap and stay home. You don't know me as well as you think. He looked at me then, really looked. I kept thinking if you came and I saw you, I'd stop, he said. I don't know why I thought that. Because you're still someone I raised underneath the person you're pretending to be? He closed his eyes. I didn't get into this because I hate people, he said. I got into it because I don't see a way out. Rent. Jobs that pay pennies. Experience required for every door. Mara said we could be a team. Devin did the call scripts. It felt like a puzzle we were smart enough to solve. Then it was money. Then it was more. I thought I could stop after the next one. There's always a next one. Every lie you told felt like a small thing, I said. Then the porch rots, and the son misses therapy, and the woman's hands don't stop shaking. You don't always see it because you don't stay to watch. He pressed his forehead to the glass. I didn't think the Satrix would actually do it. I thought people hung up. I thought they were too smart. They were kind, I said. Kindness is a door you can walk through. Or you can nail it shut so strangers can't come in. You made your choice. Are you going to hate me forever? He asked. I'm going to hold you to the kind of man you can still be, I said. And that will feel like hate until you're ready. His lawyer tapped his shoulder. Time. He looked at me like a boy on a diving board, not sure if there is water in the pool. I left the station and walked into a day that had proceeded without permission. I bought milk I didn't need just to lift something heavy. I went home and poured it into a glass that sweated in my hand. I sat at the table and wrote, not a letter to Leo, not yet, a plan. Mara and Devin did not sit in a cell with their grandfather's hands folded over their knees. They did not have a grandmother who visited bearing muffins and quiet rage. They had each other and a compact view of the world. Get, keep, repeat. If this ended with Leo alone in the punishment while the others drifted away to the next city, I would have corrected nothing. I called Alma. What can we do that stays on the right side of the law but on the firm side of right? I asked. Civil suits, she said, restitution orders, cooperation deals that require names if they want leniency. You can talk to families, you can organize, and you can be loud. I organized. The church basement was our courthouse without robes. We invited victims and near victims. We taught everyone to recognize the scripts. We drew lines between tactics. We made a hotline with 2 donated phones. We put signs in the laundromat and the pharmacy. If you are asked to move your money to keep it safe, call us first. The cashier at the pharmacy gave me a nod that felt like absolution. I visited Mara's mother, who worked the early shift at the hotel off Route 9 and wore her fatigue like a scarf. I don't know anything about her anymore, she said. She changed when she moved out. She changed around the person she wanted to impress, I said. Be ready to love her when consequences impress her instead. I visited Devin's grandfather, who grew tomatoes in faded buckets and had no teeth. He showed me a photograph of a boy who had once taken apart radios just to see how the wires curved. He stopped coming by, he said. Said he was busy. Busy with what? I guess I know now. We held a meeting where Riva spoke out of uniform, sleeves rolled, voice plain. He didn't promise miracles. He promised paperwork and pressure. He said some money would come back and some wouldn't. He said sentences depend on numbers and cooperation. He said he didn't enjoy the math. He listened while Hulda described the feel of the phone in her hand that day, heavy as an oath. He nodded when Ion said he felt stupid. You're not, Riva said. You're trusting. The law was designed for a time when trust cost less. News traveled the way fire does in dry grass. A reporter called. I talked, clear and brief. I did not cry on camera. I named schemes, not children. I didn't say Leo's name. I looked into the lens as if I was calling my own generation to the porch. We would not be quiet about our losses. We would not be vague. We would not forgive systems that help thieves stay invisible. Letters arrived at the station addressed to me, though I had never given my name. I almost fell for it, one said, because it sounded like my bank. Another, they said if I told anyone I'd lose everything. I almost did. I wrote back. Not long, not grand, practical notes, dates, a phone number to call before fear made obedience. Rivas called after arraignments. Mara's lawyer is talking, he said. She wants a deal. She'll name Devin, she'll name others. There are always others. And Leo, he's holding, he said. Presence is loyal. You know how young men are when loyalty looks like strength. He'll crack when he feels what loyalty costs, I said, feeling cruel and correct at once. He asked for you, Rivas added, not in an official way. He asked if you were all right. I'm all right, I said. I'm busy. Days shook themselves into weeks. Money clawed back, marched in like sheep that had found the gate again. Not all. Enough to steady the Satrix. Enough to replace the porch and add a rail. Hulda cried only once in my kitchen and then set her jaw like a woman who has a list. The trial was scheduled and rescheduled as if time were an accordion in someone else's hands. I told the prosecutor what mattered to me. Don't make a show of me, I said. Tell the story like a lesson plan. People learn when the steps make sense. She nodded. Young, eyes like pins. She had the face of someone who gets up early even on Sundays. I trusted her enough to sleep. The morning of the plea hearing, Leo's lawyer called. He's prepared to cooperate, she said. He'll testify about scripts, routes, cash outs, additional participants. He'll sign a statement. In return, we'll ask for reduced time and structured restitution. Structured how? I asked. He wants to work, she said, not just pay. He wants to build something back. He says you won't accept money without work. He's right, I said, though I hadn't said it out loud. At the courthouse, he looked thin, which happens when men stop pretending they're strong. Mara looked sharp and angry. Devin looked like a boy who had just realized he could not talk his way out of gravity. The judge asked questions, the lawyers answered, numbers were spoken. No one said 300,000 out loud like a headline. They said figures and dates in a tone that made them sound like reports of rainfall. I watched the Satric's faces. I measured the temperature of their eyes. They did not glow with forgiveness. They glowed with the relief of being believed. After, in the corridor, Leo stood a distance that could be closed. I made a list, he said without preface. Every name we touched, every call I made, I didn't leave anyone out, not even yours. Good, I said. Truth should sting. I don't expect you to come to sentencing, he said. I'll be there, I said. I am the witness you earned. He swallowed. I want to pay them back, he said. Not just with cash I'll never have. With work, the church basement classes, the hotline. I can teach the scripts from the other side. You will not take a bow, I said. You will work and you will go home tired and you will not ask anyone to clap. He nodded. I can do tired, he said. You always could, I said, and felt the smallest click inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the hinge that makes forgiveness possible later. It made the air easier to breathe. The neighborhood didn't reset to a fairy tale. We still check our locks twice. We still pause at unknown numbers. But porches mended. A ramp appeared at the Satric's front steps, lined with geraniums. The church basement classes went from a dozen to 50, then settled at 30, which is what you can handle without losing names. Rivas came sometimes, sat in the back with his sleeves rolled, nodded when I pointed out common lies. He drank coffee and didn't ask for muffins. I baked them anyway. Mara pleaded and named two more. Devin tried a performance of innocence that wilted under the prosecutor's quiet method. Sentences came down in numbers that were not mine to interpret. Leo's was shorter than anger wanted and longer than love preferred. Restitution was ordered. The judge said words about betrayal that sounded practiced but not false. He told me I could speak. I did not use the moment to narrate my wounds. I used it to issue instructions. To everyone in this room with a grandmother's face, I said, Che, teach your people, use examples, not lectures. Save your anger for the design of systems that make fraud easy. And to you, Leonard Ortiz, you will show up when you are allowed to, and you will carry chairs, and you will refill coffee, and you will answer the same question 50 times without rolling your eyes. You will do this until my hands stop shaking and until I can rest without listening for your footsteps on my porch. He bowed his head like a student who finally realized the homework was not optional. The judge said that would be all. The bailiff called another case. Justice didn't triumph like a trumpet. It arrived like a train on time. On the first Saturday, Leo was allowed to attend our class in the basement as a worker, not a teacher. He wore a plain shirt and an expression that did not demand sympathy. A woman asked him how scammers spoof numbers. He explained. A man asked what to do if the bank manager sighs and says nothing can be done. He described the steps we had carved out of stone. He didn't talk about himself. When his voice shook, he took a breath and started again. I sat beside Hulda and Ion. We passed a plate of cookies down the row like a communion that tasted of butter and repair. During the break, Hulda stood in front of Leo longer than comfort requires. You took our summer, she said. You took our sleep? I know, he said. We will be watching you work, she said. Do not work less because time has passed. I won't, he said. You'll get tired before I do. She nodded once. It was not forgiveness, it was a contract. Later, in my kitchen, I opened the drawer where I keep things that want to become keepsakes. I placed the purple star bill inside and shut it, not to forget. To remember that even ridiculous paper can lead you to a necessary fight. I thought of the map, the star in the corner, the way Leo had reached toward help without admitting he was asking. I thought of the man with the trembling hands who had not trembled when he drove. I thought of how every lie had needed someone to pick up a phone and listen. When the house was quiet, I made tea and sat with the cup warming my palms. I asked myself the question I had been avoiding. How could my grandson do this to me? The answer came in pieces. He could because he was young and impatient, because kindness looks like a door you can kick in, because the world teaches boys that cleverness is currency and only fools work in daylight. He could because I missed what was right under my nose, because I trusted a face I had loved longer than he'd been alive. The better question is the one I choose to hold. What do we do now? We teach, we watch, we refuse to be easy. When they say don't tell anyone, we tell everyone. When they say act fast, we slow down. When they leave a strange bill in our coat, we hold it to the light until it gives away the last of its secrets. And when justice finally arrives, not wrapped in a bow but carrying a broom, we open the door and hand it a dustpan. Weeks later, I sat on the Satric's new porch, the wood bright and stubborn under our feet. Geraniums bloomed like small flags of victory. Ion brought out lemonade. Hulda set down a plate of sliced pears from my unnecessary market trip months ago. Turned to sweetness. Children biked past, too fast, the world briefly too hopeful. Leo came by with a box of flyers under his arm. He didn't come all the way up the steps. He stood at the walk and lifted a hand. Hulda lifted hers back. Neither welcome nor rejection. Something that could become welcome if watered. Workshop at 2, he said. We know, I said. We're bringing cookies. He smiled and didn't ask for praise. He carried the box like something that mattered. I watched him go and felt my jaw unclench for the first time in months. I did not forgive him then. Forgiveness is a room you open only when you can afford the air. But I found the key in my pocket. I felt its teeth. I knew where the lock was. A thin wind came down the street and lifted the corner of a flyer on the porch. I picked it up to smooth it and saw in the lower right a tiny purple star drawn in pen. Not printed, not stamped, drawn by a hand that had practiced counterfeits and was practicing truth. I pressed my thumb to the star until the ink warmed. Justice doesn't always look like handcuffs and checks. Sometimes it looks like a boy with his head down, carrying chairs in a church basement, calling strangers sir and ma'am, while he explains how not to be tricked. Sometimes it looks like a grandmother who refuses to be quiet when quiet is what makes thieves brave. We do not get back what was lost. We get back the right to guard what remains. We get back each other if we are willing to do the work. And if some days the world still feels like a 20-cent bill, ridiculous thin, not meant to exist, we hold it to the light and let it lead us where it has to.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.